Hello, this is our final Berserk Golden Age string of videos. This is not the final Golden Age discussion though. I'm going to be hosting a live stream on my channel on the 19th, with Amber Elise, JD Legend, and BDA Law. Amber Elise and I are both newbies to the series. We're both reading through it for the first time, and we've both just finished the Golden Age arc. And Jay and Brago are veterans of the series and are actually rereading the arc in preparation for this stream. So we'll have a discussion about man, who knows? There's so much to cover. Anyway, we'll talk about the final section of the arc, which I left off about 30% through volume 12. So we're covering the rest of volume 12 and then the first 3 chapters of volume 14. So we pick back up in the chapter titled The Eclipse, where Guts is desperately rushing to Griffith to help him right after Griffith has picked up the Behelit. I think this is one of my top chapters in the entire arc. The artwork does so much storytelling in this. Like when the eclipse begins and Guts looks up in what I read as fear and shock that it's now, and Griffith turns to the fate that's looming in on him. What will he do? We have him looking up at the symbol of the time of ultimate decisions, and then looking back at Guts as darkness descends. Knowing what's to come, this whole sequence gives me chills. I know what they're coming for. I know what these creatures desire. So to watch them marching in is sobering. And the whole time, Griffith is shouting at Guts. It's such a tragic picture. Griffith screaming out, "Stay away," over and over again, but all he can get out is this nondescript yelling. The panels of Guts running are so powerful to me. He can see the monsters behind Griffith, but he doesn't slow down. He doesn't even pay them any mind. He just has to sprint as fast as he can to help him. The whole time, Griffith wants him to stay away. He says, "If you touch me now, if you put your hand on my shoulder now, I'll never again with you." I think there are several different ways to interpret the scene. Let me tell you the way I take it. I think that Griffith is still battling with the two sides of him. His love for Guts and his hatred for Guts. His affection for the Band of the Hawk and his desire for his dreams. If you touch me now, if you put your hand on my shoulder, I'll never again with you. I take this as him almost wanting the decision taken from him. Don't come near me. Don't come this way. Just leave me behind so that I don't have to make this choice. Probably because he knows that ultimately he will choose it. He knows what he desires more. He knows what he's going to pick, but he knows what it will cost him to pick it. And at least while his humanity is still intact, there's still a part of him that still wants the other decision. I'll further substantiate this later, but I think that up to the last moment, Griffith still struggled with the two sides of him, the two pieces of him, the love and devotion for the people that were his comrades, to Guts especially, who made him question his dream, or question if the pursuit of the dream was really worth losing everything for, and the dream that ultimately overpowers all else. And then darkness descends. The worst kind of darkness imaginable. There's only one word that could describe the horrors they face here: despair. The artistic direction in the characters' movements adds so much impact to these scenes. Like when Guts looks at the Behelit and then back at Griffith, who's reflecting it, and when the hand raises Griffith up, all the little looks that Griffith gives him as the mountain grabs a hold of his arm, but it lets Guts fall. Yet Griffith, I think, swings his arm down to Guts, who clings to him. But when Guts sees he's harming Griffith by hanging on him, he lets himself drop and he finds a different way up. He'll get there himself. He has to climb the mountain on his own, but he'll do anything to get him and protect him. The visual of the hands supporting the Godhand at the top, Griffith in the palm as they try to convince him to make the sacrifice so that he can be raised to the one remaining finger of the hand that is not yet occupied, All the while, the eye is looking down on the ritual, the eye that Puck laid out for us exactly what it was. And on the palm of the hand, they begin pressing Griffith on his dream. They pull him back into a time when the dream was first born, or the fountain of your past, as they put it. But this time, they take him a different route. They show him the path to the castle, into the darkness. As he falls, he's covered in the bodies. He's made dirty by them. It reminds me of back when he was in the river asking if he was dirty as he tried to scrub off of him what he had done with the king. Maybe on the outside, Griffith has been clean, but now that we're in his innermost being, he's covered by the effects of what he's done. Because the only road that leads to the castle requires trampling over the people who have fallen for you. The little boy coming back into the scene was such a powerful choice. I was sure that this death affected him more than he claimed it did way back in the flashback when we first saw this. And I think that the Godhand choosing to use the little boy in this conversation, proves that it did. Or maybe it proves, maybe they didn't choose him. Maybe what it proves is that his inner consciousness, or whatever it is that we're in right now, is showing that this death haunts him the most, and therefore he's the one that hangs around in his mind. Either way, the conversation here where he asks to come along and Griffith tells him, I can't, you're already dead. And then we finally see the arrow through his heart. Oh, it's terrible and so good. Then so many other soldiers come too, wanting to serve him. But he can't take them with him to his dream. They've already been sacrificed for it in a different kind of way. When I interpret Griffith's character, it's really important to me to cling to the glimpses of his humanity that we get. Because he's such a mysterious antagonist, we don't get that much information. We don't get that many looks into his head. And so it's really easy to see his actions and judge him strictly on those. But I think it's really important, at least for me, to cling to the glimpses that we have of his compassion, his humanity, his guilt that he carries, or at least the effects of the choices that he's made that he carries. Because I think that him choosing to fracture what's left of his humanity in the sacrifice is a big part of the impact of what he's done. If I see him as nothing but a monster at this point, then it lessens the effect of what's truly been done, which is a man with a choice, with humanity left in him, choosing the darkness. And I think cheapening Griffith's character is a temptation for me because I hate him, but it would also cheapen Gut's character because he's one who would never make this kind of choice. He's one that faces, the Godhand talked about how both the Godhand and Skullface talked about how it's like it's at your worst, it's at your most vulnerable, it's when life has broken you to the point that you cling to something else. What was it? Hold on, I bet I have a screenshot somewhere. No, I gotta stop looking. Okay, whatever. They said something, they repeatedly, I've seen it multiple times, said something along the lines of, it's when you're at your worst. It's when the struggle is the hardest that you would make the sacrifice. And we watch Guts go through everything. You name it, he's experienced it. And he would never, he will not. I mean, if the story goes that direction, I don't know what I'm gonna do. His story, from what I see here and what the text seems to be, asserting about him, is that he is one that will struggle on, not one that will surrender to the darkness and sacrifice others for his gain or for getting out of the most desperate, impossible times of his life. As Skullface put it, keep on struggling. And you know what? Judo said it too. It's been said multiple times. The point, the theme or the motif of keep on struggling is one that Guts embraces, and that's a big reason why, the way I read it, is that's a big reason why he's the antithesis of what the Godhand is offering. Anyway, side rant over. Story. Okay, so the one Godhand member, the one that's disguised as the old woman, forces Griffith to face that while yes, they choose, the soldiers choose to fight for him, he's still the one that brought them here. He can't separate himself from them. Now, I anchor this line, if you want to go all the way to the castle, you'll have to pile up many more corpses. Again, I anchor it to the scene with the king where he sold himself for money so that he could get to where he wanted to go faster. In that scene, Casca told him, we can get there. We can just keep fighting. We can keep, building up our reservoirs, our money. We can do it through the methods that we've been doing it. And Griffith doesn't want that. He wants a shorter option, a quicker option, and he'll fracture a piece of himself in order to take that shortcut, in order to get there faster. And so I anchor these together because what the Godhand here is offering him is a means to get there faster, showing him that if he continues to pursue this dream as a mere mortal, not only will it take a lot more bodies, but it'll take a lot more time. And now that his body is broken, that option doesn't even really seem accessible to him anymore. In that scene back then, he had to fracture himself in a very human way in order to get where he wanted to go faster and easier. And in this scene, he's having to fracture his humanity in a much more tangible way, and even emphasize that the other route may be closed to him by showing that his body, is decomposing, that he probably won't even make it the other way. So why don't you try our way? Let's go this way. And it's more of the same type of manipulation that we saw used back on the Count. It's too late now anyway. What good would it be to turn back? For the Count, it was. You've already fractured your humanity enough. You've already started doing sacrifices. If you don't keep going, then you're going to be damned. Might as well just keep moving forward. For Griffith, he hasn't made the first sacrifice yet, so they appeal to his human logic, not appeal to the damnation necessarily. What good is regretting it now? What can I say to the dead now? What good is repenting for my sins now? Okay, back to my interpretation of the scene when Guts was running to him. This scene feels like a direct parallel to it. Don't come here. If you touch my shoulder, I'll never with you. Here, he's saying, if I apologize, everything will come to an end. I'll never get to reach that place. I read the two "I'll never" sentiments as the inner struggle that I've been talking about. His desire for the relationship that he's only ever had with Guts, that human camaraderie and place of belonging, and his dream. Even as they push him to the fate that they want him to choose, they also tell him that if he were to not make the sacrifice, his band would accept him back. And I think that's true. I mean, I don't think that they're being forthright in everything that they're saying, but I also think that there's a lot of truth in what they're saying too. I'll talk about this later when I get into lore, trying to fit it all together in my head. There will be a section of the video for that. But they do mention that they need Griffith to make the choice. They need him to make they can manipulate the situation, but they can't force the situation. It has to be Griffith's own free will that he says the words, that he commits to this act. And they also explain that they don't know every single detail. Like, there are things that can catch them off guard. I think that they are beholden to the laws of causality as much as the humans are. I tend to think that if Griffith, because the reason, now, okay, the apostles can harm humans that have not been sacrificed. We know that. But they also hunt specifically for the blood of those who have been sacrificed. And my understanding is the eclipse is about this, what we're witnessing happening right here and now. I think that the Godhand are telling Griffith the truth here, that if he were to not do what they're trying to get him to do, then certainly the band would take him back. They would embrace him, absolutely. I have no doubts about that. But also, that is actually an option. They're not going to just then be fed to the demons. Because this has to be a choice on Griffith's part, they can manipulate, but it seems that they do have to present the choice at least mostly truthfully. Like, they have to present, this is one option and this is the other. So I do still think, even though, Griffith has gone through so much and currently his bodily state, he probably can't still pursue his dream the way that he wants to. There's no complete recovery available to him, but still, he does have the choice to not sacrifice the people that he loves the most and also personally inflict the most harm he possibly can on them. Much like the Count had the choice. It's not the better choice for him to, be dragged into hell for the sake of his daughter's life, but he still made the choice because he loved his daughter more. Griffith too, it's not the best choice for him to go on living the way that he has been, or the way that he is in now, but it would be the better choice than putting his friends through what they're about to go through and personally doing it to them himself. I'm probably overspeaking. Let me just keep it moving. So while all this is going on, Guts is scaling the mountain to get to the one that he wants to rescue, while the one that he wants to rescue considers sacrificing him. So desperately tragic. Because even now, the castle calls to him more than anything else does. Void entices him with wings. He can soar higher than he ever could as a mortal in what he could attain, and in his body being restored and now enhanced. How could he deny such an offer? Again, the art direction just amplifies what's happening here. After he hears all of this, Guts clears the summit, and the slow turn as he looks back, looks Guts directly in the eyes, considers the reality of what Guts means to him, and says, "You're the only one who made me forget my dream." And then he makes the sacrifice. It's horrible to watch Guts get shut outside of the hand, screaming for Griffith. He's just climbed this mountain, and the moment he gets to the top, he's shut out. And now, as his men are being torn to shreds, on Griffith's command, and Casca just looks on in horror and wonders, how could this happen? It's Griffith. Griffith is how it could happen. Guts fights for the man who's being reborn into darkness. With tears in his eyes, he fights through the agony as he's taunted by the Godhand, that he knows exactly what's been done. But just like with Gambino, he can't bring himself to admit to a betrayal so deep. There's no way he could do that. He'd never sell me like that. Never say something like that. When finally Guts surrenders, on his knees, he's asking the same question he asked before. Why? Is this what you wanted? And he's finally forced to accept what's been done. He gives up fighting for Griffith so he can fight for the rest. Again, the art, the slow acceptance, the look over his shoulder, the sight of what the others are facing, and harnessing all that rage so he can fight for them. He's not giving up. He's just accepting who he needs to fight for instead. Just like in his childhood flashback, it's rough to see Griffith fight for someone who would do something so horrible to him. He wants to believe in Griffith right up to the point that he can't anymore. He doesn't have a choice but to accept it. When he believes in someone, when he trusts someone, when he lets someone in, he commits to them so fully, and it hurts to watch him have that thrown back in his face again and again. And it's also unbelievable, the fact that he doesn't just quit. The fact that he turns around and starts fighting for other people rather than just giving up. But again, that's the series, or that's what Golden Age has been for him. He doesn't lose hope in everyone. He just accepts the reality of who he should be fighting for. Oh, right, and Zod and Skullface have been fighting at the bottom of the whirlwind this entire time. I'll return to that. Oh, the sequence where we watch our band fall one by one, all while trying to keep Casca alive. Pippin, our silent boy, shouting at them to run while he held one of them off, giving them just a little bit more time. Casca is their leader, so even if they can't survive in person, they survive through her. Plus, this mentality was present earlier in the story. I remember one of the battles where they defeated the leader and they were telling the rest of the army that the battle was over because the leader was dead, so there's no reason to continue fighting. I think in general they see Casca as both the hope for the band proper to live on, but also as the reason for them to keep struggling. Because if she survives, then the battle hasn't been lost. And of course, there's also the added factor for Judo of his feelings for Casca. As they're running away, Judo is trying to convince her to struggle on, using the same type of words that Guts would use to push her. The scene where he shields her from the spikes and his face is so resolved as the blood drips down on her kills me. He knows he's gonna die here, and he's accepted it. He just wants her to make it out alive. And he struggles on. Even when it's over. Even when the spikes are still sticking through him. One last shot to try to keep that demon from her. I think he must have been in love with her. I mean, I think that's what this is saying. The last thoughts he has as his eyes are closing, that most important thing that he never got to say, it just makes me love him more. He pushed Casca towards Guts and away from Griffith when he saw Griffith tried to choke him. He wanted Casca to have a better life and to be happy. He knew it couldn't be him, so he wanted her to have it with someone else, whoever she wanted. Watching him fall hurts. Judo had more heart than most characters in the series, and his ending was full of heart too. I'm glad he was given so much time in his death, even with all the chaos raging around them. He deserves that. He didn't deserve this, but he deserves the time he was given here. It just makes me so sad. But there's no time. Keep moving. Darkness is coming. Also, of course, the scene adds context to why Guts will go on to hunt down the girl in the first chapter of Black Swordsman and the Count after what they've done to our people here. And we also get a glimpse of what the rebirth looks like for Griffith. I think the wording here is very intentional. Further from the light. I mean, it says that he's the wings of darkness, so I think that's very literal. And we just saw that the deaths of those that served him do affect him, even if he chooses to value his dream over their lives. Yet here, their deaths don't haunt him. They actually pierce through him, and he feels nothing. We already know that there's a surrendering of one's humanity to become this, and now we get a glimpse of what that looks like. I think what it looks like is being taken over by darkness, surrendering yourself to it entirely. He doesn't seem conflicted anymore in his two natures. Ah, this is the panel I was looking for before. When suffering so profound as to make someone rip himself apart is confronted, a heart is frozen. And we do get a glimpse of whatever it is that these demons are serving, and it looks really gross. Okay, we're gonna pause the story here to try to work through some lore, because the lore in the series is really abstract and it bothers me. So I'm trying to wrap my head around it. So, Void, Brain Demon, says he refers to the entity that they serve as the ungodly god, which I take as the immoral god, or the god of darkness, or the god of evil, or whatever. You know, they use a lot of synonyms to describe their mission of darkness. The one that pushes darkness into the world. Do what thou wilt is their one command, which certainly leads them to embracing their darkest desires. Wild being an example of that. And we know that they at least for Griffith, they described him as like a chosen one of sorts. They described him as one that they had selected, and the Behelit clearly is drawn to people who would choose to use it. At least that's the way I'm taking the sequence of events here. So they seem to choose the ones that have embraced their inner darkness strongly, and then push them to continue that embrace until they give themselves over to it entirely. And then we saw in Wild how not only does he cause, I mean the Count also too, causes pain and destruction to those in their path, in their path of whatever it is, the kind of destruction they're going to commit, but also Wild encouraged or even threatened, intimidated his men into doing the same. Yeah, it's in the same panel, where he says the ungodly god. In the same panel, he calls Griffith the consecrated one, which is basically the chosen one in this context, I think. So they choose the ones, I assume, that are inclined to this cause and effect, and then that causes the next effect, and down the line we go. But we also know that it's not, even though Void talks about, you know, it's destined, or what does he say, it's determined, even though Void talks about determinism, we know that they have the choice not to do it, which, sidebar, I think is incredibly important. Even though, like, you know, I have my thoughts about Blob Monster Count, it was so important to see the Count refuse to make the sacrifice before we watch Griffith make the sacrifice, so that we can see that it didn't have to be done, that it was a choice made, that there is free will within whatever it is we're watching. Anyway, they call Griffith their kinsman to wear the mantle of evil. So the goal seems to be to bring darkness onto the earth, or I guess make darkness encompass the earth. They want to bring evil. And Griffith is called the wings of darkness. So by the laws of causality, he's the one chosen because he had those qualities that would go along with their mission, which is to bring darkness, or rather to encompass the earth in darkness. Maybe, I don't know. So when he says, all lies within the currents of causality, everything has been determined, all your lives have been spun into this, yada yada, I reckon that he's saying that their fate has been determined because Griffith is the type to sacrifice you all. But we know that Griffith can refuse to do the sacrifice, thereby retaining his humanity and maybe not being under the current of causality and actually going free like they tease. Maybe. Each time we talk to the humans, they say God as in singular, yet the Godhand might be indicating that there's more than one God when they say we're not gods, rather than we're not God. Plus, they kept referencing to whatever it is that they serve as the immoral God or the God born of man, so that could indicate that that there's a distinction because there's more than one. I don't know. Which would make sense to me because the Godhand are demons cosplaying as angels, at least in some of the lore, like the lore about the prison, you know, how did this prison come to be? Well, you see, these angels came and they sunk this terrible place into the earth, but also their sacrifices, and also the lore seems inconsistent. So, I mean, I don't know. And the world itself clearly isn't subject to the thing that they serve, because they need human agreement to enact their will. The will of the Godhand. The Godhand need human agreement to enact what they want to happen, which is to bring darkness into covering the earth, an age of darkness, to bring an age of darkness. And the fact that they weren't already in an age of darkness, the fact that they didn't already have dominion over the earth, makes me think that maybe there's another power that be. I mean, I don't know. Plus, this arc makes clear that they can't force someone to join them. They'll happily manipulate the situation, but it has to be an act of free will to join them. I keep saying that. I should stop saying that. I don't know. It seems that there are threads that come together because of the laws of causality, but it takes the free choice of agreement to actually bind them into what the Godhand wants. When they're trying to manipulate Griffith into making the choice, Void says, if it be reason that destiny transcend human intellect and make playthings of children, then it is cause and effect that a child bear his evil and confront destiny. Maybe you old farts could speak plainly. Would that be cool? If it be reason that destiny transcend human intellect and make playthings of children. So if you believe, this is how I'm taking it, if you believe, if it seems reasonable to you, if it be reason, if you believe that destiny can transcend human intellect and make playthings of children. He's not saying this is what it is. He's saying, if it's reasonable to assume this, then it's cause and effect. It's just the natural next step that you would bear your evil and confront destiny. It's just natural cause and effect that you would just let your greatest desires consume you and lead you. Just take the step. Just make the sacrifice. Just do what I'm trying to get you to do. So, is he... I believe that Void knows more than I do about whatever's going on in this cosmic realm, but I also know that he's probably withholding pieces of information or saying things in an elusive way so that he can manipulate the situation. So I don't trust him 100%. I don't think that he's explaining everything fully, but he's telling me something. It seems obvious that they're trying to manipulate the world according to their desires, speaking of the Godhand. And they're pulling at those, the people, the humans, that would bring further pain and destruction and bring more darkness into the world. They might not be able to control every fish, but that's fine. They just need to control the flow. And now they've finally entered into the age, they've finally brought the age of darkness because of the birth of the fifth and the Godhand, which makes me think that they've been battling for control over the flow of fate. And what we've just witnessed is them gaining that control of the flow. And one way that I imagine they manipulate and try to push what they want is through the Behelit. It's described as droplets of ideas that have spilled from the sea of eternity, summons to the other world. Now, all of this is vague, and I don't know what to do with it, but what I assume it means is that it's like little nudges, droplets of ideas to push along those that, through the laws of causality, are chosen for the flow of fate that they want to control or create. Void said that in the ruins of your dream, that is the cruel grace of the God born of man. So I'm not sure what to do with that. I don't know if in this world the gods are just the Godhand elevated to an even higher position, or if there's other ways to be elevated to ascend into Godhead, or none of it. I don't know. So let's just talk about the Skull Knight instead. I'm pretty sure he's not immortal. He refers to Zod with the title Immortal, which seems like the kind of thing you don't do if you're immortal too. Plus, Zod says that they've been foe for a millennium. And Skullface himself says that he's the foe of the Inhumans. He seems to know Void's philosophy pretty well, but also I think that you could read doubt into this, like maybe he hasn't totally bought into the things that Void spouts, which I haven't either. Twins. Plus he tried to attack Void when he was trying to rescue Guts and Casca, though he called the rescue incidental, so I think he went in to attack Void and then just decided to pick up some strugglers along the way. So right now, I think my theory for him is that Void sacrificed him, and under all that skull armor and maybe a mask, he's mortal, just like Guts. But maybe once you're sacrificed, you can't die by any way other than being consumed by the spirits, because why is he still kicking? Apparently they've been foe for a millennium. He did say that they're stuck between the mortal world and that of the dead. So, I mean, maybe that means that they don't die unless they're consumed. I don't know. Also, Zod seemed really surprised that Guts survived the sacrifice, so maybe this is the first time that's happened. Or maybe it's just super ultra rare. I said he had personal beef with Void, but he also has a personal battle with Zod. One that Zod's willing to delay because Guts made it out, but it will continue. It's going to be ongoing. But Zod also makes clear that he isn't interested in the Eclipse. He only is interested in the Strong, which certainly matches up with what we saw of him when we first battled him way back, I don't know, a million years ago. And he was super excited to find a worthy opponent. So maybe Skullface is the same thing. He's a worthy opponent. And so Zod just wants to keep on fighting him. That took me so much longer to work through than I thought it would. So if I'm wrong, it's fine. I mean, I'm sure I'm wrong. It's okay. Just tell me gently. Okay, back to Guts. So Guts is confronted with the deaths of those that he loves. There's so many panels showcasing his pain as he sees the fate that Griffith has damned them to. This is him, the one he devoted his life to, who he found a place of belonging in, who he trusted more than anyone, who he just climbed a mountain to save, and who just sacrificed them all. Here, not only to sentence them to this torture, but to personally inflict it on them. Okay, Cosmic Rape. I'm going to try to be brief with my thoughts, and I'm not going to show any of the panels, even censored. My thoughts are, I see the vision, but I don't like the execution. And I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to articulate my feelings on this because I don't want to be dismissed just because I say I don't like the execution. So I'm going to do my best to engage with this thoroughly, but still give you my honest feelings about it overall. This scene is intentionally horrific. Casca is in absolute agony, bleeding from being raped over and over again, so brutally, crying out to Guts, asking him or begging him not to look, while he's then being forced down and made to look, cutting off his own arm so he can get to her. It's horrific. It's grotesque, disgusting, indulgent, it's sick and evil. And that's the point. Griffith has surrendered his humanity, his tangled feelings, that back and forth that I read into him of his two desires is now broken, and the darkness, the wings of evil, is who he is. That is his nature now. He wants to cause Guts endless harm, and now he can do it because he no longer feels the tension, the regret, the love that we've seen, the genuine care that we've seen him wrestle with. He wants to cause Guts endless harm, and he does. He told Guts when he first claimed him, "You belong to me," and that proved to be true. He won Guts over, Guts' loyalty was wholly to him, and then when that was broken, and Guts then bonded to someone else, he lost control. And now, this is him not only being spiteful and hateful and purely evil, but it's also him regaining that control. Love or hate, loyalty or vengeance, doesn't matter which route we go. You belong to me. It shows how deep the darkness actually is. It shows how fractured from his humanity he truly has become. It did what it set out to do, but did it need so many panels to do it? Did it need so many close-ins and angles and positioning to get the point across? I understand that Griffith would have wanted it to linger and wanted it to be as sexual and uncomfortable and horrible to watch, but in order for us, the readers, to get the point across, did it need that many panels to do it? I really just don't think it did. I think that the horrors of what was happening could have been shown without that much. Now hear me out, because I want to explain this the best way that I can, because it's not an issue with the scene on its own entirely, but if the other scenes of sexual violence and sexual assault leading up to this were tamer, or at the very least each served a purpose and not some just feeling like they're there for shock factor or for grit or like with no narrative consequence, like I was talking about with Wild. And I'm not saying that they all are, but there are ones that I don't think necessarily needed to be here, and that were lingering, and that were probably more gratuitous than the scene needed them to be to get the point across. So if the other scenes like this were toned down, or at least were less frequent, then I would have looked at this scene and said, probably more than it needed to be, but I see what he was going for. But because there have been scenes leading up to this that I think narratively and visually were mishandled, it leaves me feeling exhausted by the time I get to this scene. Not exhausted like the characters are exhausted and I'm supposed to feel exhausted too, but more of the feeling of exhaustion like, another one, which is not what you want to feel leading up to a scene like this that actually has narrative impact and actually is written like this on purpose, with a purpose. I recognize that not everyone is going to get to this scene and feel fatigued by the scenes previous, and not everyone getting to the scene is as critical of some of the scenes that I'm critical of. And so, you know, different people are going to have different reactions to this and not feel the fatigue that I feel. But again, like I've said before, when you review a series as closely as I'm trying to review this one, that means the good and the bad. And for me, this was my response to this, where it was, I see the vision, it undercuts the scene. It makes me enter the scene feeling fatigued rather than it having the full impact that it's set out to have. So yeah, I don't like the scene. I see the vision. I don't like the execution because of, I think it was much more than it needed to be, and also because of the number of scenes leading up to it that I think strips it of some of its impact. I know it doesn't do that for everybody. That was my experience. Okay, back to the story. So Skullface bursts in and cuts through a bunch of demons and rescues R2. So we get to see some of Griffith's huge power when he tries to attack Skullface and crushes the demons together. But when he goes to attack again and he sees Guts, he doesn't want to. This is interesting to me. I guess he doesn't want to kill him here. He just wants Guts to go on suffering. Poor Rickert has no context for what's going on, and these giant creatures just drop in, pass off his fallen comrades, and go, don't worry about it, just heal them, and then yoink him up and rush away. I've been informed that this is an unpopular opinion, but the aftermath, after we escape the Eclipse, not intact, and we wake up in the cave, and everything that follows, this was the most painful part of Golden Age for me. In the wake of what's lost and trying to figure out how to navigate the trauma as even more trauma is heaped upon them, the heaviness of these chapters, this is the part that actually hurt the most to read. Guts has been horribly injured. Casca's brain has suppressed the trauma so much that she's forgotten who any of them are and doesn't trust men at all and just clings to Erica. They've been betrayed and they have no path ahead of them. It's so tragic. It's so heavy. I'm glad we got aftermath for this one. I'm glad that we get the time to see the real impact this horrible, horrible thing that they've gone through has had on them. But it's still really, really hurt to read. When Guts sees Casca's condition, he runs. I've never seen him run like this. I've never seen him sprint away from what's in front of him in such horror. Not since he was a child. And even then, not like this. The chapter titled The Sprint is another highlight chapter for me, and in the sense of one of the most impactful chapters. Guts running through the trees, ripping his bandages off and falling down in desperation as he thinks of all the people that he's lost. I want to share every panel of this section, really just the whole chapter we could flip through. It's so powerful and so painful. After everything that we've watched him stand up again, here he runs and he falls and he lays on the ground and he thinks of Griffith. The worst betrayal of all, the one that put them here. Maybe he knew that Guts would come back to him anyway, this time with rage, but I guess the words are still true. You belong to me. Skullface explains a lot to Griffith about stuff that we knew from the Black Swordsman. Your brand draws the spirits to you. They want your blood. You've been sacrificed, so you live as a hunted man. He gives him a cool spirit sword, and we get a page of him fighting the spirits and trying to take over him, just like we got in the Black Swordsman. I also really love Guts saying what I've been thinking, which is the equivalent of shut up with your abstract nonsense, use words or go away. But the important thing is that Guts declares war. He's not done fighting. He's not done struggling. He's coming after them all. So during all this, we realize that Casca is outside, which means that the spirits have found another torch and they're going for her. So Guts, the mad lad, attempts to carjack Skullface's horse. Guts, my guy, I know you've been through a lot, but what? I don't know. It says a lot to me that he not only saved them, incidentally, but that he deals with that kind of insolence. He actually takes Guts to her instead of being like, no, you don't talk to me that way. Yeah, this scene is rough. So when they get to Casca, after everything that she's been through up to this point, now she has to endure a miscarriage too. She's lost her memories. She's scared, confused, brutally harmed. And now this. After everything else that we've been through up to this point, I think this is the scene that finally broke me. It's just that this entire aftermath section has been so heavy, and now this, I don't know, it's just so much. And the child being possessed by evil because of the rape too, it just seems cruel. I mean, I know that this is what was haunting Guts back in Black Swordsman. I know it'll be explored, we have the promise that it will be, but I don't know, it just hurts. When we watch Casca cling to her child, much like how Shisu clung to Guts, but she can't even keep that, or watch Guts attempt to kill his child because it's evil, but he can't bring himself to do it. So the two are just left standing there alone, having lost their child on top of everything else, clinging to each other but finding no comfort in each other because even the bond that they used to have has been stripped of them. Everything has been ripped from them. I'm going to speed run these last couple chapters. So something that stands out to me is Rickert when Guts decides to leave. And he tells Guts, maybe you should stay. I think what he says to him is that it's better to go on living than to try to avenge the past. Maybe I'm just quoting Puck here. The point is, what Rickert says to him here, stay, instead of pursuing vengeance, is very similar to what Puck said back in Black Swordsman. When the half-cannibalized man was being left behind to be eaten by swamp monsters. I don't remember how that scene went exactly, but I remember Puck's words, because I remember the way they were framed in that arc stood out to me as this is probably a theme. This is probably something that I need to key in on. And Guts gets his mechanical arm, he gets his new sword, he fights off those that come for him, and the framing of this section of Guts' arc is dragons are dragons because humans can't beat them. And, you know, the symbolism here that I'm taking is that those that are inhuman, these spirits that are hunting them, are what humans can't beat. So what is a man who beats dragons? Guts, a hunted man, a suffering man, stands up and struggles onward, now hunting dragons, now off to be at war with all those that are hunting them. You know, he tells Rickert that the band of the Hawk is still here. It's not gone because we're still here. I'm gonna be the one going out and fighting the enemy. And it's just a sad ending. And looking forward into the Black Swordsman arc, all the rage, all the anger, all the fury and the guardedness that he had, now having the full context of what made him like that, of what he suffered to become so fueled by nothing but rage. All the love we've seen in him, all the care, all the loyalty, all the kindness, it's still there. We see it with the Skull Forest, with the little girl, as well as with Teresa. But mostly he's carrying so much pain that's being focused into all-consuming rage, as he cuts through as many as he can of those that have hunted him or that have harmed his friends, but primarily as he searches for Griffith. And I don't know. Casca and Guts have lost everything. And Casca's story ends with her being essentially a prisoner. I mean, they're both tormented. Casca is locked up. Guts is moving forward, but into what? This is the most depressing ending to any story I've ever read. How do I wrap up this video? The Golden Age arc is full of so much incredible storytelling, amazing character work, one of the most complex and fascinating villains I've ever read. Also, this is the beginning of, you know, what we watched in this arc was the beginning of the Age of Darkness, the making of one who fractures his humanity to gain power and embrace darkness. And then we see what's to come from that. But we're not just fixated on that. We're following one who struggles through the darkness, one who refuses to give in to that pain, one that continues struggling through the darkness, who sets himself directly opposed to it, against the darkness that tries to take him over physically and, you know, a metaphorical opposition as well. We watch someone who refuses to be crushed by it, but instead stands up and keeps pushing forward. But I mean, it's not gonna be happy. I feel an obligation to end this video on a happy note, but Mira didn't do that for me. So I don't feel like I have to do it for you. I mean, there was certainly a, you know, a musical swell at the end of He Who Fights Dragons, but, you know, he's walking into more sadness, so I'm gonna be sad for now, please. I don't know. I hope you enjoyed discussing this with me. I know I went hard with the discussion of this, and I know not everybody agrees with everything that I say about the series, but, you know, engage what you feel like engaging with. I hope you enjoyed my attempt at digging into this arc. Please chat with me more in the comments about anything you feel like talking about for this arc. Live stream next week. I'll try to get my thoughts together a little bit more for that. I'll see you again soon. Bye.